Welcome, everyone, to Myth and Magic, where you grab your cozy socks and your favorite drinky drinks, because today we're wandering deep into the forests of the Philippines to meet one of the most mysterious and strangely charismatic spirits in Filipino folklore, the Kapre, not to be confused with the Celtic Kapre. Imagine walking down a quiet jungle path at dusk. The cicadas are singing, the air is warm and humid, and towering trees stretch high above you. Suddenly, you smell tobacco smoke drifting through the air, but there's no one around. Then you hear a deep rumbling laugh coming from high in the branches. If you look up, you might see glowing red eyes and the faint outline of a massive figure perched in the tree. That is a Kapre. The Kapre is one of the most iconic spirits in Philippine mythology, equal parts guardian, trickster, and forest giant. Unlike many creatures of folklore that exist only to terrify humans, the Kapre occupies a fascinating middle ground, sometimes frightening, sometimes helpful, sometimes mischievous, but almost always unforgettable. Tonight we'll explore its origins, appearance, powers, cultural symbolism, some stories, and even where you can still find the Kapre today in art, literature, and pop culture. Let's begin where all myths begin, with its name. The word Kapre is believed to come from the Spanish word Cafre. Cafre historically referred to people from parts of Africa, and during the Spanish colonial period in the Philippines, this term influenced descriptions of certain mythological beings. Over time, the word evolved locally into Kapre, referring to a towering, dark-skinned forest spirit with enormous size and strength. The name itself became associated with a specific image, a giant, dark figure sitting in the branches of enormous trees while smoking a cigar. This connection between the Kapre and tobacco smoke became one of its most famous identifying features. The Kapre originates from Philippine pre-colonial animist traditions. Before Spanish colonization, many Filipino cultures practiced animism, believing that spirits lived within nature, including mountains, rivers, and especially trees. These spirits were known collectively as anito, nature entities that could influence human life. Many scholars believed the Kapre developed as a tree-dwelling nature spirit tied to ancient reverence for large forest trees like the balete tree. The balete tree is particularly important in Filipino mythology. These massive strangler fig trees grow enormous roots and tangled branches that create shadowy, mysterious shapes. Perfect homes for spirits. The Kapre became known as the guardian or inhabitant of these trees. When Spanish colonial influence arrived, the description of the Kapre changed slightly, incorporating new cultural imagery. But the core idea remained: a powerful forest spirit watching over ancient trees. Like many mythological creatures, the Kapre is rarely described as being born in the human sense. Instead, Kapres are often said to manifest from nature itself. Some say they are created when a powerful nature spirit chooses to inhabit a great tree. Others claim they have lived in forests since the world began. Another tradition suggests Kapres emerge when a tree becomes old enough to house a spirit. In these stories, the tree is not just a home. It is the Kapre's anchor to the physical world. Destroying that tree may force the spirit to leave or disappear entirely. As we've mentioned, the Kapre is usually described as a towering humanoid giant. It can reach up to 7 to 10 feet tall, maybe even taller. It has dark skin or a shadow-like appearance. It has a thick beard and long hair, glowing or fiery red eyes, a muscular build, with minimal clothing, often with just a simple loincloth. But the most iconic detail is the large cigar. The Kapre is almost always depicted smoking its giant cigar, producing clouds of thick smoke that drift through the forest. In folklore, if you smell tobacco in the middle of the jungle when no one is nearby, a Kapre might be watching. In Filipino folklore, the Kapre serves many symbolic roles. They are often the protectors of their trees and surrounding forests, making them a forest guardian, and they may scare away those who try to damage sacred trees or disrupt the land. They are often depicted as trickster spirits who are famous for playing mischievously. Their biggest prank is sometimes confusing travelers and causing them to lose their way in the woods, a lot like a tikbalang, though it sounds like the intention is very different. They're also described as neutral observers. Unlike demons or monsters, Kapres are often morally neutral. They rarely harm people without reason. In fact, some stories say they can even help humans who treat nature with respect. Kapres are often described as having surprisingly human personalities. Common traits include curiosity, playfulness, laziness, calmness, and occasional mischief. They are not typically aggressive unless provoked. In many stories, Kapres simply enjoy observing humans. In some tales, it's even described as them forming friendships with people, particularly children or those who live close to nature. The Kapre possesses several supernatural abilities, some of them which are familiar. Invisibility is one. Kapres can hide themselves from human sight. You might smell smoke or hear rustling branches, but never see the spirit itself. They can manipulate their size. Some legends say Kapres can appear enormous or blend into the shadows. They can also manipulate the forest around them and create illusions or shift paths to confuse travelers. Kapres are also able to teleport. They can move instantly between the trees. And they're able to create illusions for leading people astray, altering the paths that they are trying to take. Travelers might be walking in circles without ever realizing it. Several symbols are strongly associated with the Kapre. Kapre almost always live in ancient trees, particularly the balete tree. The drifting scent of cigar smoke is considered a classic sign of the Kapre. Stories often also describe two glowing, often red eyes high in the branches. And in the moonlight, Kapres may appear as massive shapes sitting among the limbs of trees. Like several of our other mythological creatures, the Kapre was not worshipped, but they were respected. In many communities, people perform small gestures of respect towards forest spirits. These included leaving food offerings, speaking politely near large trees, and avoiding sacred trees. This practice tied into the wider Filipino animist belief in Anito spirits, inhabiting the natural world. Today, Kapre still hold an important place in Filipino cultural memory. Many people still follow small traditions out of respect, such as saying tabi tabi po when passing large trees. This phrase loosely means, "Excuse me, spirits." It's a way of acknowledging unseen beings that may live nearby. Now, the Kapre has inspired countless artists. In literature and anime, there is the famous Filipino comic series called Tres, which we mentioned before, and it features many creatures from Philippine mythology, including Kapres. Alternative Alamat, a modern anthology that reimagines Filipino folklore creatures. And in visual art, you have the artist Kirby Rosanes, who has illustrated creatures inspired by Filipino mythology. Illustrations of Kapres also appear in folklore collections and mythology art books throughout Southeast Asia. And in the Ayala Museum, they frequently showcase Filipino mythological heritage. The Kapre also appears in modern media across the Philippines. We mentioned Tres, and in film, there's the Shake, Rattle, and Roll, which we've mentioned in other videos. Several entries feature mythological creatures, including Kapres. In video games, the Kapre appears in the indie games exploring Filipino mythology. And YouTube creators frequently animate Kapre folklore stories, helping introduce the creature to global audiences. All right, now it is story time. Long ago, when the forests of the Philippines were thicker and darker than they are today, 3 friends set out on a journey between villages. The road between their homes was well known. It wound through farmland and small rivers before passing beneath the towering canopy of ancient trees. The friends were confident they would reach the next town before sunset, but the forest had other plans. As they stepped beneath the shade of the enormous balete trees, the air grew strangely quiet. Even the insects seemed to hush. Then one of them stopped walking. "Do you smell that?" he asked. The others inhaled. It was unmistakable. Cigar smoke. But no one in their group smoked, and there were no houses nearby. They shrugged it off and kept walking. Soon the path curved around a large balete tree with roots like twisting stone pillars. They passed it without a second thought. 10 minutes later, the path curved again, and there it was, the same tree. They laughed nervously and assumed they had taken a wrong turn, so they walked faster. But when the path curved once more, the tree appeared again. Now the laughter was gone. One of the travelers whispered, "Something is wrong." From high above them, hidden in the branches, 2 glowing red eyes watched. A massive shape shifted in the leaves. The Kapre was enjoying the game. The giant spirit had twisted the forest paths, bending them in quiet illusions so the men would wander endlessly. The travelers began to panic. They walked in circles for what felt like hours. The forest darkened as night approached. Then the oldest among them remembered something his grandmother once told him. "When spirits confuse your path, you must ask permission to pass." He stepped forward and bowed slightly toward the tree. "Tabi tabi po," he said softly. "Excuse us, spirits." For a moment the forest was silent. Then a deep rumbling laugh rolled through the branches like distant thunder. The glowing eyes vanished. The cigar smoke drifted away. And when the men looked again, the path ahead of them stretched straight and clear. The Kapre had grown bored. The travelers never forgot that night, and from then on they always greeted the spirits of the forest before entering. In a quiet farming village, a young farmer named Renzo inherited a small piece of land from his father. The soil was rich and the rains were kind, but there was one problem. At the center of the field was a massive balete tree. Its roots spread across the ground like the arms of a giant, making it impossible to plant crops nearby. Many people advised Renzo to cut it down, but his father had once warned him, "Never harm the old trees. They belong to the spirits." So Renzo left the tree standing. One evening, while working late in the fields, he noticed something unusual. A faint trail of smoke drifted from the branches above. He looked up. For a brief moment, he saw the shape of an enormous figure sitting among the leaves, its red eyes glowing in the twilight. Renzo froze. The Kapre stared down at him, slowly puffing on a thick cigar. The farmer remembered his father's teachings. Instead of running away, he bowed respectfully. "Good evening," he said nervously. The giant spirit said nothing, but the next morning, Renzo discovered something strange. His crops were growing faster than those in his neighbors' fields. Even during dry weeks, his land remained fertile. Night after night, he noticed the scent of tobacco drifting from the balete tree. So one evening, he left a small bundle of tobacco leaves at its roots. It was his way of saying thank you. Years passed. Renzo's farm prospered beyond anyone's expectations. But after his death, his grandchildren decided the tree was inconvenient. They cut it down. The moment the trunk struck the ground, a terrible wind swept across the fields. The soil dried, the crops withered, and from that day forward, nothing grew there again. The Kapre had left. In a village near the edge of a jungle lived a young girl named Leah. Unlike most children, Leah loved wandering the forest. She spoke to the birds and listened to the rustling of leaves as if the trees themselves were whispering. One evening, while exploring deeper than usual, she came across the largest balete tree she had ever seen. Its trunk was so wide that 10 people holding hands could barely encircle it. As she approached, she smelled something unusual. Cigar smoke. Leah looked up and gasped. Sitting among the branches was a great giant man with wild hair and glowing eyes. But instead of feeling afraid, Leah simply waved. "Hello!" The Kapre blinked in surprise. Most humans ran away screaming, but this child seemed completely calm. Slowly, the giant leaned down from the tree. His voice rumbled like rolling thunder. "You can see me?" Leah nodded. "Of course!" The Kapre laughed, a deep booming sound that shook the leaves. For many evenings afterward, Leah returned to visit the tree. The Kapre told her stories of ancient forests, wandering spirits, and times long before villages existed. Years later, when Leah grew up and moved away, she returned once to visit the old tree. The Kapre was gone, but the faint scent of cigar smoke lingered in the air, as if the giant still remembered her. Some legends say Kapres possess hidden treasure buried beneath their trees. One greedy man named Caleb decided he would find it. One night, he crept into the forest carrying a shovel and lantern. He found a massive balete tree and began digging at its roots. The ground was soft. Too soft. Suddenly, a massive shadow fell across the clearing. Caleb looked up slowly. A gigantic figure stared down at him. The Kapre. Smoke curled from its cigar like a warning. "Why do you dig in my home?" the spirit asked. Caleb trembled, but lied. "I am only looking for water." The Kapre laughed. The ground beneath Caleb shifted. His lantern blew out, and when he finally found his way back to the village at dawn, his hair had turned completely white. He never entered the forest again. The Kapre stands as a powerful symbol of the ancient forests in the Philippines. It represents the mystery of towering trees, the unseen spirits of the land, and humanity's complicated relationship with nature. Not quite monster, not quite guardian, but something far older. So the next time you smell tobacco smoke drifting through the trees, you might not be alone. I actually really enjoyed this creature. I find the Kapre a lot of fun and refreshing compared to the first couple of videos we did. The tick belong was fine, but I find that the jolliness that comes with the Kapre, fun. It's cute. Yeah, that is the end of this one. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're having fun. If you haven't, maybe like or subscribe. No pressure. Yeah, we just tell stories here and talk about mythological creatures and gods and pantheons and things like that. So if that is what you are interested in, maybe follow along. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye.